Tonight, before sleep gathers like a soft tide across your thoughts, place a hand on your heart and listen for a simple word. Thank you. Thank you to the breath that has carried you through this day, to the body that tried its best, to the unseen web of hands that placed food on your table and lighted your door. In Buddhism, gratitude isn't decoration. It's a practice that turns the mind from scarcity to sufficiency, from restlessness to rest. When we name our blessings, the nervous system loosens its grip, the jaw unclenches, and the pillow becomes a small shore of peace. Let this episode be your lantern, a quiet walk through memory and kindness, where even difficulties bow and reveal their lessons. Breathe in, breathe out, each cycle a whispered bow. Stay with me and let gratitude cradle you toward a deep, untroubled sleep. You are safe home. Tonight we begin with a tiny seed, no larger than a grain of sand, resting in the open palm of your attention. A seed called gratitude, the gentle power in Buddhism known as Katanyukatavedi, the knowing of what has been done for us and the wish to respond with care. Imagine this seed warming under the lamp of your breath, each inhale like sunlight, each exhale like soft rain, and as you breathe, the seed releases a subtle fragrance of enoughness that drifts through your thoughts and settles your day. Let your jaw loosen, your shoulders ebb downward, and feel how the body, so often asked to carry more than its share, is willing to forgive the burdens for now, because this is a sanctuary minute, a place where you do not need to fix, earn, or prove, only to notice, and in the noticing, to be changed. Remember that in the Buddha's teaching, everything arises with conditions. Nothing stands alone, and so this moment is woven from threads you didn't spin alone. The farmer who coaxed rice from the soil, the engineer who kept water clean, the driver who delivered a simple parcel that made your afternoon easier, the teacher from years ago whose sentence still echoes when you need courage, the friend who texted 3 words that became a bridge, the stranger who held the elevator door when your hands were full. Feel how your breath grows rounder as you recognize how held you have been by these countless hands, and let the mind bow to them one by one without effort. The bow a natural tilt of the heart rather than a task. If a shadow of doubt arrives saying that gratitude is naive, smile at it as you would at a small cloud passing across a wide blue sky, because gratitude in this practice is not denial but deep seeing, the wisdom that names the full field, the hardships and the helps, the thorns and the petals, and finds that even the thorns taught your feet to step more mindfully. Allow your attention to rest on your eyes, these windows that gathered colors and faces and signs all day. Whisper thank you to the muscles that focused and the tears that kept them clear, then to your ears that carried music and warning and laughter, to your tongue that tasted sweetness and salt and remembered home, to your hands that touched keys and cups and fabric and the warmth of another hand, to your feet that bore your plans and your doubts with the same steady willingness, and to the faithful lungs that rose and fell, a tide whose patience is older than words. Tell your nervous system that it may stand down now like sentries relieved at dawn, because in this moment you are not under attack, you are received. Imagine laying your day on a shoreline, letting the water reclaim its weight, and as the water recedes, the sand beneath becomes firm and cool. a place you can stand without clenching. Consider the times you were impatient, sharp, or afraid today, and without blame, place them gently on the shore too, letting gratitude soften their edges, because gratitude is also for the chance to try again, for the wisdom of not yet and next time, for the skillfulness that grows one patient breath at a time. If a particular person comes to mind, perhaps someone who irritates or confuses you, hold them in the same light and acknowledge. If only for a heartbeat, some small way they have helped you learn, maybe by showing a boundary you needed or a value you almost forgot. And notice how your chest loosens when the heart shifts from judgment to curiosity. Pause with the simple miracle that this body is a meeting of earth, water, fire, air, and space, borrowed elements arranged by uncountable causes, and that even your pillow participates in this web. The cotton that was once a field, the thread that traveled on distant roads, the hands that stitched it, the light that guided those hands, the meal that gave those hands strength, and the rain that fed the meal. What we call mine is truly ours. And in this recognition, a shy joy appears, because you don't have to be a solitary hero tonight. You can be a guest who says thank you and rests well. Let your breath trace a small circle at the tip of the nose, in and out, like a firefly making a slow halo, and with each circle, repeat quietly, I see the help, I receive the help, I let the help become kindness. Remember that gratitude in the Buddhist path is an awakening to interbeing, the insight that a sheet of paper contains a cloud, a logger, sunlight, the lunch of the logger, the soil, the seed, the rain, the childhood of the person who taught the logger to read, and by the same logic, your evening contains the morning. Your successes contain teachers and deadlines and mistakes. Your rest contains the efforts you made and the permission to lay them down. Picture a simple bowl in your hands, not yet full, and notice how the bowl itself is a gift. The clay from somewhere far away, the fire that baked it, the water that cooled it. The quiet mind of the potter turned toward usefulness, and feel how, holding the bowl, you become both the receiver and the giver, because even as the bowl is offered to you, you are offering your attention, and attention is the first generosity. Allow one memory from today to glow slightly brighter, not necessarily the grandest moment, but a small enough one that you might have missed it. A shaft of light on a kitchen tile, a bird stitching the sky with its flight, the way steam curled from your tea and drew a transparent question mark, the relief after you sent the message you were afraid to write, the brief smile you caught in the mirror when you knew you had been honest. Place that memory in the bowl, and as you do feel your breath lengthen by a fraction, the body understanding that it is safe to linger. If the mind asks for more, offer it one more memory, perhaps the feel of clean fabric on your skin or the sound of an evening street settling down, and notice the subtle shift from collecting to savoring, from acquiring to appreciating. Appreciation is slow by nature. It asks for the pace of a river bend, and as you match that pace, the muscles around your eyes soften and the forehead clears. Whisper inwardly to those who cared for you long before you could name them, the caretakers, visible and invisible, parents, kin, guardians, teachers, elders, and the vast chain of ancestors whose resilience became your capacity to breathe here now. And if grief rises because some are gone, let gratitude hold hands with grief, because they understand each other. Both are forms of love, recalling what was given. Tonight, the practice is simple and profound. Breathe, notice, thank, release. Each cycle rinses the mind like clear water over smooth stones, and the stones of worry begin to show their colors rather than their weight. If fear speaks, what about tomorrow? What if I fail? What if I am not enough? Bow to fear for trying to protect you and tell it that for these few minutes, gratitude will watch the gate, and gratitude knows the difference between danger and memory. Imagine your room as a small temple of the ordinary, where the altar is your nightstand, the incense is your breath, the bell is your heartbeat, and the sutra is the story of your day rewritten in the ink of kindness. Quietly vow that you will treat yourself tonight as you would a dear friend who arrives weary at your door. And then fulfill the vow at once by loosening your grip on expectations and letting the body sink by a few millimeters deeper into the support beneath. Gratitude also extends inward to the parts of you that kept going, the decision you made to apologize, the care you took to finish a task properly, the humor you found in a difficult hour, the restraint you practiced when words were hot and you chose silence instead, and to the part that stumbled too, because stumbling is how a path is remembered in the feet. You are learning to see the world as a field of gifts, and in such a field, even the night is a benevolent teacher whispering that rest is not laziness, but belonging. Let your thoughts thin like mist as the breath grows rhythmical, and if the mind tosses up images, welcome them as visitors and seat them on the veranda of awareness with tea and space to go when they are ready. There is nothing you have to hold down, only a softness to hold up. The softness that says, thank you to this minute. Thank you to the countless conditions that allow a safe bed. Thank you to the body for trying. Thank you to the mind for learning. Thank you to the heart for its unbroken wish to love. As the seed of gratitude settles into the dark, nourishing soil of your calm, it begins to sprout into a quiet confidence that you are supported, accompanied, and free to sleep. Trust that this simple seeing is already practice, already transformation, and that with every night you return to it, the seed will send deeper roots and wider leaves until one evening you realize that gratitude is no longer something you do, but something you are. A gentle shade tree under which the mind can rest while the stars take attendance and the world hums its lullaby just for you. Begin by letting the room become a shoreline and your body a small, sturdy boat resting on its quiet water. The day's wind softening, the ropes loosened, and as you arrive here, invite the breath to be your oars, steady and unhurried, dipping into the calm and lifting again, neither forcing nor fading, simply reliable. Now, allow attention to settle like a warm hand on the crown of your head, feeling the hush that gathers there as if the sky itself were leaning close to listen and whisper, thank you, to the scalp and the hair that shielded you from sun and cold, to the skin that sensed the brush of air and the movement of time, to the skull that housed your thoughts like a temple that never closes. As your awareness tilts gently forward, notice the brow and the small muscles around the eyes. Heroes of focus who carried light and color and the touch of faces you love, and let them soften as if returning keys to a caretaker at the end of a shift, saying thank you for reading, for squinting, for blinking away dust and doubt, for letting tears wash what words could not. Let gratitude slide to the eyes themselves, these lucid lakes where the world meets the mind, and see if a kindness arises for the countless photons that crossed years to be seen by you today, for the miracle of vision that stitched images into memories and warnings into choices, and let the gaze relax, no longer searching the horizon for answers, content that the answers may come in sleep. Drift down to the nose, the bridge that held your glasses, the passage that welcomed the quiet incense of evening, and to the sinuses and the tiny cilia that guarded your breath, and murmur, thank you for your vigilance, for the way you caught the first scent of rain or remembered a kitchen from childhood, because memory often travels by way of fragrance. Let appreciation touch the cheeks where laughter rested and worry hovered, and let them grow warm with forgiveness, forgiving the flush of embarrassment and the tightness of long days, letting the jaw unclasp as if releasing a small pebble you forgot you were holding, honoring the teeth and tongue that labored over food and syllables alike, thanking the tongue for shaping tenderness and restraint, for tasting sweetness and caution, for being a faithful instrument even when the music was difficult to play. Attend to the ears, the shell-curved doors of your inner house, which received traffic without complaint, the voices of co-workers, the hum of engines, the errant bell of a notification, and here and there a laugh that opened windows and now offer them rest, a permission slip for silence, acknowledging the tiny bones that translated vibration into meaning all day long. Turn with kindness to the throat, the passage where breath and word share a narrow road, and imagine it widening with trust, the muscles easing, the swallow smooth and unburdened. Thank you to the vocal cords for their fragile courage, even on days when they quivered with fear or fatigue, and to the neck for holding the world of your head so diligently that you forgot the weight it bears. Let your gratitude descend across the shoulders like a shawl being lifted away. Notice how they have rolled forward in worry or squared themselves like gates before uncertainty, and now let them fall into their true shape, a quiet slope, thanking the trapezius and deltoids and all the small stabilizers that negotiated gravity on your behalf, and feel the relief that comes when an invisible load is set down. Wander down each arm with respectful attention to the upper arms that carry groceries and carry children and carry the awkward box of a difficult conversation, to the elbows that bent with compromise and rose with resolve, to the forearms that typed and washed and waved, and finally to the hands, your most eloquent tools, palms that recognized warmth, fingers that learned the braille of your life by touching keys and cups, fabric and doors, the brief electric knowledge of another hand fitting into yours. Open the hands in the air or on the sheets as if releasing small birds you had nursed to strength, and thank the nails and knuckles, the old scars and the new intentions, for their industry and their grace, for the way a hand can say yes or no, or I'm here without a word. Return to the chest with a listening heart, literally listening to the heart, that tireless drummer whose tempo followed your emotions all day, quickening with effort, slowing with kindness, thudding with worry, lifting with relief, and offer it a bow, not because it is flawless, but because it is faithful, because it has never requested a day off, because it is trying alongside you to bring each moment to shore. Accompany your gratitude to the lungs, those billowing trees whose branches are made of breath, who have been exchanging gifts with the world since the hour you were born, oxygen for life, carbon for the plants. And notice how each inhale is a visitor and each exhale is a blessing returned. And for a few rounds, let the breath lengthen by a thread, not performance, simply generosity to yourself. Continue downward to the ribs, the lattice that safeguards your lights, and to the spine, the quiet river of bone that holds your story upright. And imagine each vertebra as a stone polished by water and time, stacked with the wisdom of adaptation, and say thank you for keeping me tall when I felt small, for letting me curl when I needed to protect the tender parts. Arrive soft-footed at the belly, home of digestion and intuition, and place a hand there if it feels good, thanking the stomach for its alchemy, the liver for its relentless housekeeping, the intestines for their humble choreography moving nourishment where it must go, the pancreas for its balancing act, the kidneys filtering out what can be let go, and the pelvic floor for holding the bowl of your being so you could move through your day without thinking of every little miracle at work. If there is tightness here, do not scold it. Breathe warmth into it like pouring tea into a cold cup, and tell the belly you are grateful for how it speaks to you, sometimes in discomfort, sometimes in butterflies, sometimes in a deep knowing that precedes logic, and promise to listen more kindly. Move to the back body, the wings folded beneath your shoulder blades, the muscles that carried backpacks, expectations, and the habitual lean toward screens, and with every exhale, let them smooth. As if an iron set to the lowest, safest heat were passing over fabric, easing out pleats of tension, and under that, thank the lungs again from behind, the kidneys again where they quietly toiled, the adrenals for doing their best to protect you, even when they overreacted to small storms. Slide your attention to the hips, crossroads of movement and memory, where you store old sprints and old fears, and bow to the complex architecture that lets you stand, sit, step, and sway, the joints that release and catch, the cartilage that cushions, the ligaments that remind us to respect limits, and let the hips be heavy, inviting the earth to carry a little more of you. Travel along the thighs, pillars that bore the brunt of stairs and deadlines, and bless their strength without comparing them to anyone else's, thanking them for being yours, for their shape that speaks of your life, not an idealized sculpture, but a lived-in home, and follow the path to the knees, miraculous hinges that learn humility as they age, that beg for alignment and reward it with ease, that ask for forgiveness when they click and ache, and offer the knees forgiveness now, placing in your breath the tenderness of a friend. Continue to the shins and calves, the front that knows impact and the back that knows propulsion, the calves that tightened in effort and can now melt with a breath like snow easing into water, and to the ankles, those narrow diplomats between leg and ground, and finally to the feet, the brave maps of your days, each toe a small compass point, each arch a bridge, each heel a solid punctuation mark at the end of a sentence. Imagine rinsing the feet in a clear stream and drying them with light, thanking the soles for their constant negotiation with the world's textures, tile and grass, gravel and wood, and acknowledging the small pains they carried without ceremony. Now that you have greeted the whole body, let gratitude gather into a gentle field around you, as if your skin were not a border, but a meadow edge, and the meadow extended softly outward, and in this meadow you can rest without guard because you belong here. Notice how, as appreciation spreads, the nervous system recognizes safety. The shoulders and belly and throat admit their exhaustion and then relinquish it. The breath becomes a lullaby without lyrics, and the mind, seeing no chores left unattended, begins to unwind its lists into waves that dissolve on an inner shore. If difficult sensations remain, place them each in a little boat of breath and let them rock on the surface without needing to sink or sail, telling them they have time and that you have room. And if anxious thoughts try to rehearse old scenes, invite them to sit by the fire and grow sleepy with the rest of you. Remember that reverence for the body in this way is not vanity, but clarity, not clinging, but caretaking, because the body is the first monastery where patience and compassion are trained, and every thank you offer it becomes a bell that calls the mind back from wandering. As you lie here, you might recall times you pushed this body past its signals, and if regret rises, let gratitude be the form of apology that actually heals, promising to listen sooner next time, to feed, to move, to rest, to refrain from harshness in your own self-talk, to treat this creature as you would a loyal companion who has walked beside you for years. You may also notice the quiet companionship of countless lives within you, the microbiome feasting and balancing, the cells conversing with chemical syntax, the blood visiting neighborhoods of muscle and thought, and thank them too, the invisible citizens whose work you rarely witness, and yet whose dedication is the very definition of devotion. As the practice ripens, begin to weave simple phrases into the breath, silently aligning inhale with I am cared for and exhale with I can rest, or inhale thank you body and exhale I am with you. And let the phrases grow fainter until they are only feelings, and then let the feelings sink until they are only the ease of being. Imagine that with each exhale, a tiny lantern of warmth travels from the center of the chest outward to any remaining tightness, and with each inhale it returns to refill itself at the hearth of your heart. And after several lanterns have made their rounds, the house of your body is softly lit from the inside, no corner scolded, every hallway gently, respectfully seen. Understand that in this simple tour you have performed an act of refuge, turning from the noise of the day toward the reliable sanctuary of your own aliveness, and that sanctuary now offers you a bed not only of fabric, but of permission. Permission to drift, to dream, to reset, to be exactly as you are without ornament or defense. As the final minutes of waking fold themselves smaller, hold the body in gratitude one last time, like a child receiving a blanket, and feel how the blanket becomes the night. The night becomes a vast palm, and in that palm you are cradled, harmless and at home, breathing with the world as the world breathes with you, until the boundary between your boat and the water disappears, and there is only the gentle rocking of sleep coming to meet you, the way dawn meets the shore, inevitable, tender, and enough. Imagine tonight as a long, quiet corridor lined with doors, and on each door is a name that once steadied you when the ground felt unsure, and as you walk slowly with the lantern of your breath, you pause before the first door and remember the earliest caretakers, the arms that learned your weight before you learned your name, the people who woke at inconvenient hours to answer your smallest storms, who translated the world's cold into blankets and the world's puzzles into patient sounds. Breathe in and let the chest swell with recognition. Breathe out and whisper thank you to the ones who fed you with spoon and with story, who made rooms safe by presence alone, who tied your shoes and your days together with a rhythm you could trust. And if those first caretakers were imperfect, if their hands sometimes trembled with their own unsolved pain, let gratitude widen to hold both the gift and the difficulty, honoring the simple fact that you were carried, that someone tried in the ways they could, and that every kindness offered to you then still ripples through your choices now. Step to the next door where teachers and mentors live, those faces that appeared at thresholds of confusion and quietly slid a compass into your palm. The teacher who believed you were capable before you had evidence. The coach who noticed you needed rest more than a lecture. The elder who told you a story that let you inherit courage and bowed to them without dramatics, recognizing that knowledge is a lineage and you belong to it, that your competence is a chorus, not a solo. Let your gratitude reach the friend who stayed late after everyone else had gone home, who remembered your small preferences, a little less sugar, a little more space, and who made an ordinary afternoon feel livable again, and also the friend who once failed you and by failing revealed a boundary you needed. For even that hard lesson was a kind of care when seen with the eyes of wisdom. Think of the healthcare workers who touched you with professional tenderness, the nurse who adjusted a pillow and with that simple gesture announced that comfort matters, the doctor who returned with results and spoke in a tone you could bear, the therapist who kept reflecting your dignity back to you when your own mirror was fogged, and send a soft pulse of thanks to each of them, a warmth that travels beyond words. Include the helpers you rarely meet, the farmer whose back met the sun so your bowl could meet fullness, the driver whose roots stitched cities together so medicine and letters could arrive, the engineer who coaxed clean water from complexity, the volunteer who sorted donations so a stranger would feel less alone, the sanitation workers who lifted the weight of what you were ready to release. And notice how your breath deepens when the field of caretakers expands beyond personal stories into a web that holds everything you call a day. Pause at the door labeled community, the loose and luminous tapestry of neighbors and shopkeepers, the barista who learned your name or at least your smile, the librarian who guided your hands across the spines of possibility, the person at the park who let your dog sniff longer than politeness demands, the quiet commitments that make a street feel like home, and offer a small inner bow to all who keep the lights of communal life burning with tasks too small to trend and too essential to ignore. If your heart twinges with grief for the caretakers who are gone, let the twinge unfold into a room of candles and pull a chair close, because grief is gratitude with nowhere to send the letter, and tonight we will write anyway, placing on the table the shape of their hands, the smell of the kitchen they filled, the sentences they repeated until they became a path you could walk in the dark. If you carry resentment toward a caregiver whose love was tangled with harm, do not force a forgiveness you do not yet have, but experiment with a tiny gratitude for the fragment of good that coexisted with the confusion. Perhaps a ride given, a meal cooked, A warning that turned out to be wise, and let that fragment be a door not to excuse, but to reduce the weight you haul to bed. Now, in the theater of imagination, hand yourself an envelope and fill it with breath, and on the breath print the words, "Thank you," as if the ink were made of rest, and slide the envelope under each door one by one. To the grandmother who hummed, to the neighbor who watered plants when you traveled, to the co-worker who covered a shift, to the older sibling who showed you how to tie a knot and later how to untie one. Remember the caretakers made of fur or feathers, the animal who taught you loyalty without vocabulary, who sensed your mood with a tilting head, who curled at your feet like punctuation at the end of a rambling sentence, and smiled gently because devotion has many languages, and you were fluent with them once without trying. Consider the caretakers you never saw, the cybersecurity analyst who kept your account safe while you slept, the city crew who repaired a wire at 2 a.m., the researcher who refined a medicine years before you would need it, the anonymous donor whose blood or marrow threaded life back into someone you love. And realize your life is a confluence where many unseen rivers meet, and the sound you hear when you listen inward is their water arriving. Take a slow breath and imagine your back leaning into all these hands at once. A steadying you didn't know you were allowed to accept, and feel how the body responds with a small surrender, the shoulders unhooked from the ceiling of worry, the belly unknotted from tomorrow, the jaw no longer auditioning for the role of iron. If a specific memory appears, a ride to school through rain, a note tucked in a lunch bag, a stern but fair correction that spared you a larger pain, let it play, but at half speed, so the details glow, the sound of wipers, the ink of the note, the tone that cared enough to risk your temporary displeasure, and breathe the word gratitude into the memory until it becomes lighter than when it began. Sometimes caretaking hurt because it came with strings, expectations, or moods, and tonight we acknowledge that too and choose a softer practice to separate the deed that helped from the weather that accompanied it, keeping the deed as a seed and returning the weather to the sky. Now bring to mind those you have cared for, because gratitude grows when it moves in circles. And recognize that your capacity to offer a glass of water, a listening ear, a ride to the clinic, or a day of your weekend arose from what was offered to you, and that everything good you've given is also a thank you carrying forward. In this gentle arithmetic, no act disappears. The kindness you received from a teacher 20 years ago becomes the tone you use with a nervous colleague. The meal a neighbor brought once when you were ill becomes a habit of checking on others in storms. And so the world is quietly maintained by gratitude disguised as ordinary help. If tonight you feel alone or undercared for, let the meditation expand to include the care of the more than human world, the tree outside your window that made oxygen all day without boasting, the ground that did not collapse under your steps, the gravity that held you when you were too tired to hold yourself, the sky that kept watch, the moon that borrowed light to make your path across the kitchen visible, and realize the curriculum of care is ambient and continuous. Rest your hand on your heart and offer 3 silent bows to caretakers, known, unknown, and future, the ones who will arrive when needed and the ones you will become for others. And with each bow, let the breath lengthen by a syllable, writing with air a promise to stay inside this reciprocity, to let help in as well as out. If you are ready, imagine standing before one door in particular, the person who most shaped your sense of safety, and see their face as it was on a good day, the day they managed to be their best, perhaps younger, perhaps free of the heaviness that shadowed them. And speak inwardly. I see the effort. I see the cost. I see what you tried to give even when it was hard. And because I see it, I can rest. And because I rest, I can carry forward the best of you. This is not a spell to change the past, but a seat where you can sit without the past pressing on your ribs. Let the breath fan that seat into comfort. Hear the low music of belonging returning to your nervous system shore. Remember the practical. Caretaking looks like lists and alarms, pickups and drop-offs, invoices and casseroles, schedules and scalpels, paperwork and lullabies, and the holy hides in the paperwork as surely as in the lullaby. Gratitude is the lantern that reveals the holiness as you pass through. Consider writing a real letter tomorrow, or sending a message, or performing a quiet act in their honor. But for now, release action and keep only acknowledgement, because acknowledgement is the fertile soil from which right action grows. Notice that the mind is calmer, that the crowd inside has taken seats, that the critic is perhaps leaning drowsily against a pillar, and that in this hush you can hear the deeper vow of life to life. I will keep you as best I can. Offer a breath to caregivers who are paid too little, who missed their own meals to bring yours, who practiced difficult compassion in rooms that smelled of antiseptic and uncertainty, and bless their endurance. Offer a breath to the caregivers within you, the adult who kept appointments, the adolescent who kept hoping, the child who kept reaching, and thank them for not giving up on one another. If guilt arises because you think you haven't thanked enough, let gratitude transform guilt into a simple next kindness. Then set even that intention down for the night. You are not required to complete the circle before you sleep, only to recognize that you are in one. When you open your eyes on some future morning, you may find that the air itself feels more friendly, that your voice drops its armor when speaking to those who help, that you remember to look at name tags or to ask how someone's day has been. Tiny acknowledgments that are the currency of a compassionate world. For now, let the corridor dim as doors receive their envelopes of breath-written thanks, and feel the weight leave your shoulders, because gratitude shares it across the network it reveals, and the network is strong. Lie back as if into a meadow mown by many hands, and let sleep approach like a caretaker too, one who knows how to tuck, how to turn out the last light, how to stand in the doorway for a moment to be sure you are warm enough, then leave you to the gentlest silence, where the whole world sits outside on the porch keeping watch, and you finally can rest. Tonight, let us widen the circle of gratitude until it includes the wind that moved the curtains in the quiet architecture of clouds, until it includes the soil beneath every building and the moss patient on the shaded brick, until it includes the river you haven't seen in years, but which keeps you alive through cups and soups and showers. And as you breathe, feel the world breathing with you, plants offering the green gift you return with every exhale. A partnership so constant it is almost invisible. Imagine holding a single grain of rice on your palm and looking with a kind of attention that turns seeing into understanding. Within that grain, there is a field. Within the field, there is rain, learning the shapes of leaves. Within the rain, there are oceans and glaciers and the slow patience of air-climbing mountains to become weather. Within the field, there are hands and seasons. Within the hands, there are stories. And when the grain meets heat, it becomes supper. And when supper meets gratitude, it becomes a teaching. And when the teaching meets your heart, it becomes rest. Offer thanks to the sun that wrote light into your day, even through a window or through cloud. To the way sunlight traveled 8 minutes in a lifetime to touch the rim of your cup. To the way a tree translated that light into sweetness and wood and shade. To the way your body translated fruit into the ability to lift, to listen, to forgive. As you inhale, picture a forest exhaling, and as you exhale, picture a forest inhaling. The reciprocity old as breath itself, and notice how the nervous system loosens when you remember that you are a participant, not a separate spectator standing apart from this choreography. Bring your attention to water, that patient shapeshifter, and track the glass at your bedside back through pipe and reservoir, river and stream, back to the hill where a thaw ran down with a glint like a whisper, back to clouds gathered by the sun's hand, and even further back to the sea where salt stories are kept, and say thank you to each form water has taken to reach you, to the engineers and stones, to the valves and the old riverbeds inside your language, to the storm you once cursed, now understood as a courier. If you like, lift the glass and feel its coolness, mirroring the coolness that will settle on your thoughts, and drink not as a habit, but as a small ceremony, the way monastics drink tea, acknowledging that this sip carries mountain, bird, rain, and time. Rest your body heavier into the mattress and think of the mattress as a meadow condensed, cotton fields spun and stitched, coils drawn from ore that slept in rock for ages, foams refined by minds that studied comfort, delivery routes that threaded dusk and dawn, and the long human wish to give the body a good night's place, and say thank you to the meadow and the miners, the chemists and shippers, the designers who thought of your spine, though they have never met you. Turn your cheek to the pillow and wonder at its ancestry. A seed that once leaned into wind became a flower, became lint and staple, became bale and bolt, became cloth that now holds your dreams the way a shoreline holds the sea, and offer gratitude to the small, unglamorous persistence of fibers that will not abandon your neck at 2 a.m. If sadness rises for the harm humans have done to the natural world, let gratitude guide that tender grief, because gratitude is what keeps love from dissolving into despair. Thank the earth for enduring us, even as we learn to do less harm. Thank the birds for stitching morning with song despite concrete. Thank the weeds for green insistence in sidewalk seams, and in that thankfulness, make a quiet vow to tread more lightly tomorrow. Maybe one lamp switched off, one piece of plastic refused, one meal eaten with attention enough to honor the field and the truck and the cook, one tree greeted like an elder. Widen again to the night sky, the long chandelier without walls, and sense how your body carries star inheritance, calcium from ancestral seas, iron forged in stellar fire, carbon once breathed by leaves. And say thank you to the galaxies for their patience while you learn to say please, and thank you to the moon for rehearsing gentle changes, to the tide for reminding you that retreat is not failure but part of a rhythm. If you live where stars hide behind city light, thank the street lamps that keep more vulnerable hearts safe, and still imagine the constellations keeping watch above the luminous veil. Because imagination is also a way of seeing, and seeing is a way of belonging. Bring the senses home to the humble kingdom of your room, the smell of clean fabric, the click of cooling metal, the far hum of a train carrying stories to other towns, and let them be ambassadors of a wider world you get to rest within, because resting is not opting out of life, but consenting to be held by it. Remember the meals of this day or week and view them as councils convened by nature. A salad is a green parliament of leaves arguing beautifully for rain. A bowl of rice is a choir of fields singing about patience. A slice of bread is a map of sun travel across wheat. An orange is a lantern invented by a tree. Even the spices that lifted your palate carry latitudes and labor, caravans and docks. And with each memory, the tongue can say thank you in the language of savoring. If you grew a pot of basil by a window, or kept a succulent alive, or greeted a neighborhood dog, let those gestures reassure the part of you that fears being too small to help. Because reciprocity does not measure itself in headlines, but in habits, in the modest rituals of care you repeat until they become your way. Imagine your breath as a bee visiting flowers in the meadow of your body, bringing sweetness from one place to another, pollinating calm, and think of the real bees who work today somewhere out there in clover and orchard, and bless them for their choreography with blossoms. Bless the beekeepers tending wooden cities of amber. Bless the whole golden exchange that lets fruit exist. Offer gratitude to stones for their quiet counsel, for teaching you how to be steady without shouting. To mountains for teaching you dignity without contempt. To deserts for teaching you the sacredness of water and attention. To oceans for teaching you depth without possession. To wine for teaching you change without apology. If you walk today, thank the sidewalks for guiding you over roots and puddles, and thank the roots that heave sidewalks because they are busy with their own purpose. Because a city that remembers the underground is a city still in conversation with life. Think of birds as small prayers set to motion, of insects as patient librarians of decay who return what has ended to the library of beginning, of fungi as whisper networks of forests teaching trees to share and say thank you, to the vast collaboration that turns fallen leaves into soil and soil into green and green, into breath and breath into the thought you're thinking right now. Consider the weather that visited your window and address it without judgment. Thank you, rain, even if you canceled my plans. Thank you, heat, for reminding me to drink and slow down. Thank you, cold, for clarifying edges and teaching me the kindness of warm clothes. Thank you, fog, for making mystery visible and inviting me to speak more softly. If you have known disaster, a flood, a fire, a storm, let your gratitude include the earth's fierce moods without romanticizing pain, honoring the responders and neighbors, honoring your own resilience, honoring the way communities reassemble like flocks. As you lie here, realize that gratitude toward nature is also gratitude toward time. The long patience of trunks adding rings, the patience of dunes walking with wind, the patience of seeds sleeping through winters. And by aligning with that patience, you permit yourself to heal at a natural pace. You stop demanding instantaneous bloom and instead water the root of small practices. Place one hand on the belly and one on the chest and feel the tide moving within your personal shore. And imagine that with each exhale, tiny boats carry messages of thanks out along invisible canals, to the garden you once visited and loved, to the trail you hope to walk again, to the public park where strangers and trees share an unspoken treaty of shade, to the lake that reflected your confusion until it loosened, to the alley cat who taught you the dignity of wariness, to the pigeons who proved that flight can thrive even on ledges and ledges. Remember that everything you own is made of somewhere. And let gratitude turn ownership into stewardship. The way a borrowed book makes you careful, the way a rented cabin makes you sweep the floor before you leave, the way a trail sign makes you pack out what you brought in. You can practice this stewardship in bed by blessing the objects nearby for their origin stories, the lamp's metal veins, the book's forest ancestry, the phone's minds and minds, and by resolving gently to choose tomorrow with this awareness awake. Now bring to mind the teaching of interbeing, that a page contains cloud and logger and lunch and the childhood of the teacher who taught the logger to measure, and extend that seeing to your evening. Your rest contains the nurse who will wake rested because someone watered her plants. Your comfort contains the roofer who kept the leak from spreading. Your quiet contains the musicians who built a song that soothed you while you washed the dishes. And as the web becomes visible, the loneliness thins, because to be woven is to be relieved of carrying everything alone. Feel the floor beneath you as an earth hand, and the ceiling above as cloud knuckles, and the walls as careful trunks making a grove around you. And in this imagined grove, you can set down the backpack of vigilance and curl like a woodland animal in safe cover. If thoughts race, invite them to lie down like leaves that will become soil, and promise them that the forest of your mind will be richer for their rest. End this wandering gratitude by returning to the simplest place, the current breath that carries the scent of night and the texture of sheets and the hush of the room. And on the inhale, think quietly, I belong to the earth. And on the exhale, think the earth belongs with me, not as possession, but as companionship. And let the meaning of that companionship rock you. Somewhere outside, a moth reads moonlight. Somewhere a tree adds a ring. Somewhere a small wave explains persistence to the sand. And here you are, a modest miracle among miracles, saying thank you in the oldest way, by softening, by listening, by sleeping. And as your eyelids grow heavy, trust that the world keeps watch. Photosynthesis and gravity and tide and time continuing their faithful work while you rest, so that you may wake tomorrow a little more tender, a little more careful, and a little more in love with the ordinary holiness that has always been waiting at your window. Tonight, let words become soft lanterns rather than sharp tools. Let the mouth rest from argument and the tongue learn again its oldest song, the simple cadence of thank you, spoken and unspoken, sounded and breathed. In Buddhism, speech is a path, and gratitude is one of its safe bridges, a way to carry our intention across the river of misunderstanding without drowning. So begin by noticing how language sits in your body, how the jaw carries yesterday's unresolved syllables, how the throat tightens around unsent messages, how the chest braces for replies that never arrive. And with each exhale, loosen these knots as if untying a ribbon from a gift you finally feel ready to open. Imagine that every sentence you speak tonight must pass through a garden, and that only what is gentle and true can find the gate. And as you walk there, gather small phrases like herbs. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for the effort I didn't see. Thank you for reminding me what matters. Thank you for staying. Thank you for telling me when I strayed. Thank you for being here even when the here was messy. And notice how even silently rehearsing these phrases begins to untangle your nervous system's alarms. Consider that gratitude is best carried on the breath, because breath has the correct tempo for kindness. And so practice speaking on the slow tide. Inhale to find the honest part. Exhale to share it without decoration. Inhale to feel the listener's humanity. Exhale to place the words in their hands without pushing. When you think of someone you love, say thank you inside their name and watch the mind's portrait of them change, hard edges warming into contours of shared time. And when you think of someone with whom you struggle, try the same, not as a surrender of your boundaries, but as a reclamation of your own clarity. Because gratitude says, I will name the good and still keep myself safe. If you write messages before bed, let them be brief in particular. A soft spotlight instead of a floodlight. Not a grand thesis of love, but the line that reveals the room. I saw how you held the door for me twice today. I noticed your laugh making space for everyone. I'm grateful you answered even though you were tired. I appreciate how you told the truth kindly. Specificity is the grammar of gratitude, and it keeps praise from floating away like a balloon untethered. Speak this way to yourself too, because inner speech shapes the dream field, and you deserve to fall asleep under words that treat you as someone worth keeping. If your habit is to rewind the day looking for errors, set a bell in the mind that tolls gently and asks what went right and who helped it go right. Then answer out loud in a whisper, because whispering gratitude to an empty room is not foolishness, but training. A rehearsal that makes the courageous sentence feel familiar when it is needed in the bright morning. There is a way to offer thanks without begging, without debt, without turning yourself small. Stand a spine easily, soften the lips, let the breath be simple, and speak thank you as one sovereign to another, as if exchanging gifts across a table. Because the truest gratitude recognizes dignity on both sides. Remember the teaching of right speech, true, beneficial, timely. Spoken with a mind of loving kindness, and let gratitude align you with each of these, because thank you is true when it names a real help, beneficial when it waters a seed, timely when it arrives before resentment can sprout, and loving when it is offered without a hook. If you owe an apology, let gratitude be the doorway to it. Say thank you for telling me how my words landed, and then I'm sorry, which is also a form of thank you to the relationship for being worth repair. If you are afraid of sentimentality, use plain language, because plainness is powerful. Thank you for dinner carries more tenderness than a paragraph of defensive jokes. And if you're afraid of vulnerability, try gratitude in small doses, 1 sentence a day, the way you might stretch a muscle you haven't used in years. Think of letters as boats and gratitude as air current, and pick one person in memory, perhaps someone gone to whom you have never written, and in your mind compose a simple note. I didn't understand then, but I see now. I couldn't say it then, but I can say it tonight. Thank you for the rides, the stories, the stubbornness that taught me to stand up. Seal it with an exhale and place it on the lake of your quiet. Trust that spoken or unsaid, a sincere thanks changes the speaker, and that is already a movement toward peace. Practice gratitude in dialogue with the world of objects as well, because how you speak to things influences how you speak to people. Tell the kettle, thank you for the warming. The door, thank you for guarding. The shoes, thank you for the miles. The screen, thank you for the connection you made possible. And now, I invite you to rest, and you will find that your tone with yourself softens in parallel. When anxiety visits and wants a monologue, interrupt gently with a call and response of appreciation, asking the body what it did right today and letting it answer. I paused before replying. I drank water. I kept the appointment. I remembered to breathe. And then reward each answer with a quiet good job, a phrase that is sometimes the missing blessing between effort and sleep. If conflict is fresh, gratitude can be a de-escalation. Without erasure, you can say to yourself, thank you for my own instinct to protect. Thank you for the part of the other person that wanted safety too. Thank you for the clarity that arrived even if it was late. Thank you for the boundary I learned to set. Imagine conversations as rooms you build together and let gratitude be the window, letting in air before anything wilts. Even silence can carry gratitude when it is infused with presence. So if words are impossible tonight, sit in the company of a photo, a scarf, a book someone gave you, and let your attention itself be a thank you, because devotion is sometimes just unhurried looking. Make a gentle ritual if you wish, a nightly phrase that cues your whole being toward rest. Something like, thank you, day, for trying with me. I release you now, and say it at the light switch, say it at the curtain, say it to the pillow, and eventually your muscles will recognize the phrase and relax as they do when a familiar song begins. If your voice has ever been used against you, or you learn to stay small to stay safe, let this practice be a reclamation, not of volume, but of tenderness. Speak to yourself as a guardian would, using gratitude to reparent the moments that were starved of praise. Tell the younger you who still waits in a corridor of years, thank you for surviving. Thank you for finding laughter where there was none. Thank you for keeping a scrap of hope under your pillow, and feel how the present body settles when the past is properly thanked. Gratitude is not flattery, which manipulates, nor is it debt, which chains. Gratitude is accuracy paired with generous naming, and when you practice it aloud, you join your voice to a long lineage of chants and sutras that turn sound into healing. If envy rises, speak gratitude for what is already yours, and for the fact that another's abundance demonstrates possibility. And if bitterness rises, speak gratitude for the boundary it points to, and for your new choice to tend your own ground. Keep the phrases short, like stepping stones across a stream, and move at the pace that keeps your feet dry. Let there be play, too, because joy is gratitude wearing bright clothes. Thank you to the pun that made you snort, to the dog that smiled with its whole back half, to the neighbor's wind chime that improvised a solo, to the unexpected coincidence that felt like a wink. Before sleep, send 3 small messages into the world, whether by phone or by heart, each containing 1 sentence of thanks, with a detail only you would know, and then put the phone away, because Part of the practice is trusting that gratitude does not require applause to work. Recline and speak inwardly to the night itself. Thank you for the lesson in surrender. Because every hour of darkness is a syllabus on letting go, and align your breathing with the curriculum, in and out, saying less and meaning more. Tomorrow, let your first words be a continuation of tonight's vow. Good morning, said, like an offering rather than a demand, and a quiet thank you to the body for returning, to the bed for keeping vigil, to the light for its patient arrival. For now you have done enough with words. You have aimed them like arrows and used them like shields. Tonight you let them be birds that settle on the branch of your tongue and preen in peace. And as they tuck their heads beneath their wings, the world grows quieter, your mouth grows softer, and gratitude, unspectacular, trustworthy, warm, smiles in the dark and keeps watch until you sleep. Tonight, let words become soft lanterns rather than sharp tools. Let the mouth rest from argument and the tongue learn again its oldest song, the simple cadence of thank you, spoken and unspoken, sounded and breathed. In Buddhism, speech is a path, and gratitude is one of its safe bridges, a way to carry our intention across the river of misunderstanding without drowning. So begin by noticing how language sits in your body, how the jaw carries yesterday's unresolved syllables, how the throat tightens around unsent messages, how the chest braces for replies that never arrive. And with each exhale, loosen these knots as if untying a ribbon from a gift you finally feel ready to open. Imagine that every sentence you speak tonight must pass through a garden, and that only what is gentle and true can find the gate. And as you walk there, gather small phrases like herbs. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for the effort I didn't see. Thank you for reminding me what matters. Thank you for staying. Thank you for telling me when I strayed. Thank you for being here even when the here was messy. And notice how even silently rehearsing these phrases begins to untangle your nervous system's alarms. Consider that gratitude is best carried on the breath, because breath has the correct tempo for kindness. And so practice speaking on the slow tide. Inhale to find the honest part. Exhale to share it without decoration. Inhale to feel the listener's humanity. Exhale to place the words in their hands without pushing. When you think of someone you love, say thank you inside their name and watch the mind's portrait of them change, hard edges warming into contours of shared time. And when you think of someone with whom you struggle, try the same, not as a surrender of your boundaries, but as a reclamation of your own clarity. Because gratitude says, I will name the good and still keep myself safe. If you write messages before bed, let them be brief, in particular. A soft spotlight instead of a floodlight, not a grand thesis of love, but the line that reveals the room. I saw how you held the door for me twice today. I noticed your laugh making space for everyone. I'm grateful you answered even though you were tired. I appreciate how you told the truth kindly. Specificity is the grammar of gratitude, and it keeps praise from floating away like a balloon untethered. Speak this way to yourself too, because inner speech shapes the dream field, and you deserve to fall asleep under words that treat you as someone worth keeping. If your habit is to rewind the day looking for errors, set a bell in the mind that tolls gently and asks what went right and who helped it go right. Then answer out loud in a whisper, because whispering gratitude to an empty room is not foolishness, but training. A rehearsal that makes the courageous sentence feel familiar when it is needed in the bright morning. There is a way to offer thanks without begging, without debt, without turning yourself small. Stand the spine easily, soften the lips, let the breath be simple, and speak thank you as one sovereign to another, as if exchanging gifts across a table. Because the truest gratitude recognizes dignity on both sides. Remember the teaching of right speech, true, beneficial, timely, spoken with a mind of loving kindness, and let gratitude align you with each of these, because thank you is true when it names a real help, beneficial when it waters a seed, timely when it arrives before resentment can sprout, and loving when it is offered without a hook. If you owe an apology, let gratitude be the doorway to it. Say thank you for telling me how my words landed, and then I'm sorry, which is also a form of thank you to the relationship for being worth repair. If you are afraid of sentimentality, use plain language, because plainness is powerful. Thank you for dinner carries more tenderness than a paragraph of defensive jokes. And if you're afraid of vulnerability, try gratitude in small doses, 1 sentence a day, the way you might stretch a muscle you haven't used in years. Think of letters as boats and gratitude as air current, and pick one person in memory, perhaps someone gone to whom you have never written, and in your mind compose a simple note. I didn't understand then, but I see now. I couldn't say it then, but I can say it tonight. Thank you for the rides, the stories, the stubbornness that taught me to stand up. Seal it with an exhale and place it on the lake of your quiet. Trust that spoken or unsaid, a sincere thanks changes the speaker, and that is already a movement toward peace. Practice gratitude in dialogue with the world of objects as well, because how you speak to things influences how you speak to people. Tell the kettle, thank you for the warming. The door, thank you for guarding. The shoes, thank you for the miles. The screen, thank you for the connection you made possible. And now, I invite you to rest, and you will find that your tone with yourself softens in parallel. When anxiety visits and wants a monologue, interrupt gently with a call and response of appreciation, asking the body what it did right today and letting it answer. I paused before replying. I drank water. I kept the appointment. I remembered to breathe, and then reward each answer with a quiet good job, a phrase that is sometimes the missing blessing between effort and sleep. If conflict is fresh, gratitude can be a de-escalation. Without erasure, you can say to yourself, thank you for my own instinct to protect. Thank you for the part of the other person that wanted safety too. Thank you for the clarity that arrived, even if it was late. Thank you for the boundary I learned to set. Imagine conversations as rooms you build together, and let gratitude be the window, letting in air before anything wilts. Even silence can carry gratitude when it is infused with presence. So if words are impossible tonight, sit in the company of a photo, a scarf, a book someone gave you, and let your attention itself be a thank you, because devotion is sometimes just unhurried looking. Make a gentle ritual if you wish, a nightly phrase that cues your whole being toward rest. Something like, thank you, day, for trying with me. I release you now, and say it at the light switch, say it at the curtain, say it to the pillow, And eventually, your muscles will recognize the phrase and relax as they do when a familiar song begins. If your voice has ever been used against you, or you learn to stay small to stay safe, let this practice be a reclamation, not of volume, but of tenderness. Speak to yourself as a guardian would, using gratitude to reparent the moments that were starved of praise. Tell the younger you who still waits in a corridor of years, thank you for surviving. Thank you for finding laughter where there was none. Thank you for keeping a scrap of hope under your pillow, and feel how the present body settles when the past is properly thanked. Gratitude is not flattery, which manipulates, nor is it debt, which chains. Gratitude is accuracy paired with generous naming, and when you practice it aloud, you join your voice to a long lineage of chants and sutras that turn sound into healing. If envy rises, speak gratitude for what is already yours, and for the fact that another's abundance demonstrates possibility. And if bitterness rises, speak gratitude for the boundary it points to, and for your new choice to tend your own ground. Keep the phrases short, like stepping stones across a stream, and move at the pace that keeps your feet dry. Let there be play too, because joy is gratitude wearing bright clothes. Thank you to the pun that made you snort, to the dog that smiled with its whole back half, to the neighbor's wind chime that improvised a solo, to the unexpected coincidence that felt like a wink. Before sleep, send 3 small messages into the world, whether by phone or by heart, each containing 1 sentence of thanks, with a detail only you would know, and then put the phone away, because part of the practice is trusting that gratitude does not require applause to work. Recline and speak inwardly to the night itself. Thank you for the lesson in surrender. Because every hour of darkness is a syllabus on letting go, and align your breathing with the curriculum, in and out, saying less and meaning more. Tomorrow, let your first words be a continuation of tonight's vow. Good morning, said, like an offering rather than a demand, and a quiet thank you to the body for returning, to the bed for keeping vigil, to the light for its patient arrival. For now you have done enough with words. You have aimed them like arrows and used them like shields. Tonight you let them be birds that settle on the branch of your tongue and preen in peace. And as they tuck their heads beneath their wings, the world grows quieter, your mouth grows softer, and gratitude, unspectacular, trustworthy, warm, smiles in the dark and keeps watch until you sleep. Tonight, let gratitude step off the cushion and into your hands. Let it become a quiet choreography of doing that requires no applause, a soft current called generosity that in the Buddhist path is known as dana, the giving that cleans the windows of the heart until the world looks close and dear. Begin by remembering how often you have been carried by the unseen labor of others, and feel how that remembrance naturally wants to move, not out of debt or guilt, but out of kinship. The way a branch extends because sap rises. If you wonder what counts as giving back, let the scale fall away and focus on sincerity. An open seat on a crowded bus, a message sent to lighten someone's late-night worry, a dish washed when it wasn't your turn, a silence kept when gossip knocked, a door held, a compliment offered without sugar, a patient listening that lets another person set down a heavy bag for a while. Generosity does not ask you to be extravagant, only to be available, and it learns to offer the right gift at the right time. the glass of water rather than the lecture, the ride rather than the remedy, the presence rather than the plan. Notice how your breathing changes when you imagine yourself moving through a day with this tender readiness. Shoulders unhooked from urgency, eyes alert for chances to relieve a small ache without making a ceremony of it. Remember, too, that the most fragrant gifts are often anonymous, like a seed slipped into soil at night, and consider practicing one secret kindness each day, not to hoard virtue, but to free your service from the theater of being seen, to feel again the childhood pleasure of leaving a treasure where someone will stumble on it and smile. As you contemplate generosity, invite wisdom to sit beside it, because giving without wisdom can exhaust you or enable harm. So let your boundaries be the frame that allows your kindness to be art rather than spillage, and trust that no is sometimes a gift that protects a deeper yes. Think of service as a circle rather than a line. What you offer returns as ease in your own nervous system, as meaning braided into your hours, as a subtle sense that you are located in a web and not drifting outside it. And this return is not a wage or a scoreboard, but the body's way of saying, this is what we are made to do. If the mind protests that your life is already too full, smile and propose a small experiment, a 3-minute gratitude ritual each evening that spills gently into action. When the day leans toward sleep, turn off one extra light and let darkness coat you in simplicity. Then breathe for 1 minute with the phrase, thank you. On the exhale until your chest softens. During the next minute, bring to mind one person you can ease tomorrow and picture a single concrete act. The message drafted, the appointment made, the snack packed, the reminder set, and during the 3rd minute, perform a tiny offering now, perhaps laying out your clothes, so the morning you is less burdened, filling a water bottle for a partner, sending the 2-line note that will unclench a colleague's jaw, placing a book by the door to return on time so another reader can have their turn. Close the ritual by touching the floor or the bed frame and bowing in your heart to everything that collaborated with you today. Then sleep. This is how grateful intention becomes muscle memory, how compassion is folded into the bread of ordinary days. If you share a home, let the ritual be contagious in the kindest way, not by preaching, but by modeling. A chore done without announcement, a calendar checked so the family's wheels align, a child invited to choose a toy to donate, not as lost, but as making space for someone else's joy. And notice how the atmosphere changes when labor is seen and shared. Generosity thrives on attention, so practice seeing the invisible tasks others do. The trash taken out before it smelled, the ingredients stocked, the passwords remembered, the quiet vigilance of someone who keeps the household's little rivers running, and say thank you aloud or with a touch, because appreciation is also a gift and it multiplies energy. Let your giving reach beyond walls when possible, not with the heaviness of saving the world, but with the lightness of participating in it. A bag of pantry items dropped off without fanfare, a monthly donation the size of a coffee to a clinic or shelter whose work steadies the tender edges of your city, a willingness to vote and volunteer and learn the names of the people who keep your neighborhood humane. If money is thin, offer time. If time is thin, offer attention. If attention is scattered, offer breath by pausing before you speak, so your next sentence reduces harm. Generosity can also be creative. Bake extra and label it for the night shift security guard. Carry an extra umbrella in monsoon season, the way sailors carry spare lines. Keep a small kit in your bag. Band-aids, mints, a pen, a charger, as if you were the quiet quartermaster for the small fleet of lives around you. Add to this the generosity of restraint, the gift you give by not correcting every small error, by not broadcasting every irritation, by letting someone else's story stand unchallenged when accuracy is less important than dignity, by cutting short the spiral of complaint with a pivot toward what is workable. Remember that service is not a performance of goodness, but a practice of belonging. And belonging requires that you receive as well as give. So when someone offers help, let them. And when you need help, name it clearly. Because asking is a way of saying, I trust us. And trust is a gift with long echoes. Cultivate a household culture where favors are not ledgered but thanked, where chores are not gendered but matched to capacity and season, where the question, how can I make this lighter for you, is as common as what's for dinner. If you work in a team, begin meetings with a minute of appreciation for unseen work. Rotate facilitation so leadership is shared, and make feedback a form of kindness by including a path forward. Remember that your body is a commons too, and give back to it with sleep, stretching, nourishing food, and the tough generosity of stepping away from screens when your eyes plead for sky. If you are tempted to delay service until you feel more perfect, recognize that perfection is the enemy of participation, and that your imperfect presence is already useful. Make a list not of achievements, but of roles. Neighbor, auntie, friend, colleague, customer, citizen, guest, and ask, what does generosity look like in this role today? Then choose one small answer and do it. When resentment whispers that others should have done more, sit it down with tea and remind it that you are choosing your acts as offerings, not bargaining chips, and that sometimes the fairest trades are the ones not calculated at all. Cultivate the art of leaving places better than you found them. A sink rinsed, a table wiped, a bathroom mirror cleared of the fog of your breath, a meeting room chairs gathered, a park trash pocketed, and let this art become reflex, as natural as saying thank you after a meal. Practice the generosity of teaching what you know without hoarding or condescension, and the generosity of learning without defensiveness, because the world needs both teachers and beginners, and sometimes they are the same person in the same hour. Give yourself to attention in conversation, setting down the phone and turning your body toward the speaker, a gesture that says, you are worth my full presence, and watch how this simple offering deepens trust. Stretch your definition of giving back to include the climate that makes generosity possible. Humor that eases a heavy day, music shared, a poem texted at the right moment, a story that dignifies struggle without glamorizing it, a ritual of lighting a candle for someone's operation and then blowing it out the next day with gratitude. When you feel small or powerless, remember that ecosystems are kept alive by small exchanges repeated faithfully. Bees visiting, mycelium threading, waves lapping, and choose one small exchange to keep repeating. Check on an elder every Sunday. Pick up 5 pieces of litter on your walk. Praise the friend who always remembers birthdays. Send the same modest donation on the 1st of each month. Keep a basket by the door with spare masks or sanitary pads for anyone who needs one. Forgive yourself when fatigue makes you less generous, and rest without apology, because rest is how you refill the well that others drink from. When envy tightens your chest, turn it gently with an act of service toward the one you envy or toward someone unrelated, converting scarcity into circulation. Keep a notebook by your bed, a ledger of gratitude that only counts what you give away. Today, I offered a ride. Today, I returned the text quickly. Today, I let someone merge in traffic. Today, I named my boundary kindly. Today, I laughed at someone's joke, even if it was not very good, because I saw they needed the laugh. And read this ledger on difficult nights to remind yourself that your life already shines with tiny lamps. As the day ends, imagine placing your gifts on the shore of a wide lake and watch how they become boats for others, some close by, some far away. And then imagine the boats others launched for you today arriving at your dock, and bow to the whole harbor, understanding at last that giving back is simply participating in the tide. Now, surrender to sleep as the most radical form of trust, a nightly relinquishment that says, I have done what I could. I hand the rest to the dark and to the countless caretakers, human and more than human, who continue the work while I dream. Feel the body, thank you for this wisdom. Feel the breath, thank you for the slower pace. Feel the room, thank you for the quiet. And as your eyes close, let one last intention ripen in the heart. Tomorrow, may my gratitude walk on 2 feet. May it carry something light enough to share. May it speak with a voice that calms. May it bow to the limits that keep it kind, and may it keep returning again and again like the tide, like a friend, like a promise I am willing to keep. Tonight, let the circle of gratitude turn inward, not as a retreat from loving the world, but as the final completion of that love, because the hand that offers kindness to others must also be held. Begin by recognizing the quiet worker within you, the part that rose when mornings were reluctant and tried again when attempts dissolved, the part that answered messages and folded laundry and kept tiny promises no one saw, and bow to that faithful presence. Place a palm on your chest and feel the steady percussion of effort, the body's humble metronome that kept time through your triumphs and your near misses, and say thank you to the one who stayed when you wished to disappear. Thank you to the one who kept learning, even when the lesson arrived in riddles. Thank you to the one who carried tenderness like contraband through rooms that did not recognize its value. If a stern voice in you objects, saying you haven't done enough, that gratitude is for better people with neater lives, invite that voice to sit down and rest its armor by the door, because tonight you are practicing a grammar older than achievement, the grammar of belonging, where worth is a birthright and not a trophy. Remember, the places you chose care over speed, that hour you paused before replying, the moment you apologized first, the morning you laced your shoes and stepped out, even though the sky felt heavy in your bones, the evening you chose sleep over scrolling, the glass of water you drank instead of another cup of worry. And as you count these small mercies directed toward yourself, notice how the shoulders descend like birds finding their own branch. You have a younger self who lives in the hallways of memory, a small traveler who learned early how to scan faces for weather, who stored jokes like lanterns and hid a reserve of courage beneath the bed, and tonight you can visit them with the calm of someone who has crossed a few winters. Sit beside that younger you and say, I see the roads you walked for me. I see the nights you guarded hope. I see how you made a badge from scraps of kindness. Thank you for surviving with enough wonder left to recognize beauty now. If tears arrive, let them be a warm rinse for the pathways where harshness has traveled too long, because the nervous system understands sincerity better than strategy. Perhaps perfection has been your old God, asking for offerings of exhaustion and receiving them without blessing, and perhaps you have believed that rest must be earned with flawlessness. Let tonight be the quiet apostasy where you set that belief down and discover that imperfection is not a stain, but a seam, a place where you can be stitched to the rest of life. Gratitude for yourself is not vanity. It is maintenance, like oiling a door so it opens without shriek when someone you love needs the room beyond. Speak inwardly to the muscles that carried you, to the mind that kept trying to arrange meaning from tangled string, to the heart that dared to care again after each bruise. Thank your curiosity, which kept stepping toward light. Thank your humor, which is the soul's agile way of loosening knots. Thank your seriousness, too, which sat at the workbench of attention so your days could hold shape. If part of you is embarrassed to receive this praise, remember how you reassure a friend when they cannot accept a compliment. How you might say, take it as a gift and place it somewhere safe for later, and extend that same gentleness to your own resistance. Imagine your life as a workshop where you have been repairing a vessel while still sailing it, patching leaks between storms, learning how to read the wind, and remember how many crossings you made without fanfare. Gratitude now is like a lantern hung in that workshop so you can see how far you've come instead of only where the next nail must go. Let your attention enter the body like a soft tide, thanking the brow for learning to smooth itself, the jaw for the labor of speech it performed and the restraint it practiced when silence was kinder, the throat for carrying words of truth even when they shook, the shoulders for bearing invisible cargo, the belly for digesting not only food but feelings, the back for its spine of quiet courage, the hands for their negotiations with the world, the feet for their democracy of places visited, and as you name each part, add a sentence of permission. You may rest now. Imagine meeting your reflection tomorrow morning and greeting it with the friendliness you reserve for guests, not the audit you reserve for yourself, and feel how the future loosens its grip on fear. Gratitude is also a border, and tonight you can thank yourself for the limits you have learned to hold, for the no that protects your yes, for the discipline of leaving conversations that cost your dignity, for the courage to disappoint someone rather than abandon yourself. If guilt rises because you have sometimes failed to protect yourself, thank the lesson that showed you the cost of self-betrayal and bless the new vow you are writing in your bones. I will not trade my well-being for a belonging that requires me to disappear. Consider the projects you did not finish and the plans that frayed, and instead of scolding, thank your discernment for learning where energy did not belong. Thank your intuition for tugging at your sleeve. Thank your body for withdrawing cooperation when the price was too high. Often we call this quitting, but sometimes it is wisdom stepping in quietly to adjust the course. Bring to mind the moments you forgave yourself. After the sharp word, after the missed chance, after the awkward exit, and recognize that each act of self-forgiveness made you more honest and more available to others, because people who are reconciled with themselves do not need to export their shame. If you struggle to feel gratitude toward the current version of you, try thanking earlier chapters, the student who stayed up to learn a skill that fed you later, the friend who kept a phone charged during hard years so connection could find you, the worker who saved, the dreamer who said yes to a risky beginning, the caretaker who held a routine until it became a lifeline. You are the benefit of their stubborn hope. Now thank the future self, who is not yet here, but already sending back instructions in the language of longing, the one who knows which habits must be released, which friendships need more attention, which mornings ask to be quieter. Gratitude can travel forward as a promise. I will try to become the person you will not have to forgive for neglecting you. You can make a gentle ritual for yourself without leaving the bed. Place one hand on the heart and one on the belly and say 3 sentences that begin with thank you for trying, and 3 that begin with I allow, as in I allow rest, I allow softness, I allow progress without punishment, and feel how the mind's watchdogs settle when permission is given in a voice that sounds like home. If you keep a journal, write a small inventory of self-kindness that occurred today and would otherwise vanish. I took a break before I snapped. I walked around the block. I said, I don't know. I asked for help. I laughed at my mistake and then learned from it. I did not compare my progress to a stranger's highlight reel. Let this inventory become a long ledger that contradicts the old myth of your not enoughness. Thank your senses for their loyalty to beauty, even when life felt gray. The eyes that keep noticing light in the sink water, the ears that catch a sparrow ribbon in the air, the nose that recognizes a memory in bread, the skin that understands the language of a hot shower, the tongue that translates gratitude into flavor. Thank your sleepiness for arriving now as a guardian rather than an enemy, for drawing a curtain around the day so your interior crew can tidy the theater and repaint the set for tomorrow's play. If you have been waiting for someone else's permission to be good to yourself, offer it now in your own handwriting and seal it with an exhale. Repeat silently. I am allowed to be kind to myself without earning it. I am allowed to speak gently to myself in rooms where I once learned to shout. I am allowed to rest before I am broken. Imagine your heart as a small house with many rooms and open a door you rarely enter. A studio where your creativity waits without judgment. A kitchen where your instincts cook soup from sparse ingredients. A porch where your patience watches weather roll in and out and walk through, thanking each room for its labor even when you have ignored it. Write a short note in your mind to the body parts that have been criticized by you or others, saying, thank you for keeping me alive. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your shape, which is a map of my living, and promise to stop speaking the language of warfare to a home that shelters you. Let your breath become a settle into a posture that feels like kindness from the inside, neither rigid nor collapsed. The spine a gentle river, the shoulders floating like small boats set free from their moorings, the jaw unlatched, the tongue resting softly behind the teeth, and let the breath begin to draw a slow circle through you, in and out, a lantern that brightens on the inhale and glows on the exhale. If the mind is still dressed in the day's clothes, allow it to quietly undress. Release the shoes of urgency, the coat of comparison, the hat of what-ifs, and place each garment on an invisible chair by the door of this moment, promising the mind that anything truly necessary will be waiting in the morning, refreshed by the night. Now, invite the word thank you to arrive not as a phrase to be performed, but as a temperature to be felt. A warmth that begins in the center of the chest, no larger than a candle flame, and with every breath, let that warmth soften outward through the ribs and shoulder joints, down the arms to the wrists and palms, into the fingertips, until the hands feel lit from within. Then let it move like tea poured into a cup along the spine, up through the throat to ease old sentences that were never answered, and down through the belly so digestion can set down its guard and become a lake under moonlight, ripples smoothing to glass. On your next inhale, imagine gathering a small bouquet of moments from today that might otherwise vanish. The way the light paused on a wall, the glimmer of a kind glance, the relief of a door that opened on the first try, the quiet dignity of your feet carrying you from room to room, and on the exhale place this bouquet on a little altar at the center of your awareness, not a shrine to grand achievements, but to ordinary mercies, because ordinary mercies are the architecture of rest. If a difficult memory appears and asks to be counted to, give it a chair near the altar and a cup of the same warm attention, whispering, "Thank you for the lesson tucked into your thorns. I will learn what I can, and let the night learn the rest." Breathe slowly and imagine that with each inhale, you borrow the gratitude of the world around you, the tree that keeps exchanging breath with you without complaint, the lamp that gives its light simply because it can, the mattress that holds your weight without negotiation, and with each exhale, you return your gratitude like a tide going out to sea, equal parts giving and receiving until there is no friction in the exchange. Now begin a gentle body prayer without words, letting appreciation travel as sensation. At the crown of the head, a soft bow to the day that nested in your hair. Across the brow, a cool cloth of ease smoothing the muscles that studied faces and screens. Over the eyes, a curtain drawn halfway so sight can rest and dream can write its messages on the inside of your lids. Along the cheeks, a warm palm where laughter and effort left their small signatures. In the mouth, the taste of honesty, gratitude for what was said and what was wisely left unsaid. At the throat, a widening of the hallway where breath and meaning pass each other like courteous travelers. Over the heart, a steady drum becoming gentler as if the drummer were stepping back from the stage and into the green room of peace. Within the lungs, bellows that have worked all day now moving like slow sails on a night crossing. Through the belly, a kind permission to unclench, to trust that everything knows where to go. Along the lower back, a shelter for the stories you're not carrying tonight. At the hips, a gate that opens onto a meadow where the body can graze on rest. Down the legs, rivers returning to the quiet sea of the sheets. At the ankles, little hinges oiled by relief. At the feet, maps of the day rolled up and stored with a label that reads, "Resume tomorrow." If thoughts wander, let them wander like children in a safe park while you sit on a bench breathing, waving at them as they pass, not recruiting them to chores, not scolding them for noise, simply letting the park become night silver and soft. Bring to mind someone who made this day easier in any measure, a cashier, a friend, a colleague, a stranger who moved aside, and offer a silent bow inside their name, allowing their face to float for a moment in the lamp of your attention. Then let the lamp rotate to you and offer the same bow to the one who kept going, to the one who paused and tried again, to the one who remembered water, to the one who brought you here. Now, imagine a small, clear stream running through the center of your chest, and with each exhale, drop into it a pebble engraved with gratitude for a facet of life that holds you, for a breath, for shelter, for a lesson learned, for food, for a voice that can apologize, for hands that can help, for time enough to sleep. Hear the pebbles make their soft plinks and watch the circles widen until they overlap into one wide still pool. If the body wants a phrase to accompany the breath, let it be as simple as inhale, thank you, exhale, I release. And let the syllables ride the breath the way a lullaby rides a rocking chair, without hurry, without agenda. Picture the night as a benevolent librarian collecting the day's books from your arms. This was worry, this was effort, this was joy, this was confusion, and filing them onto the proper shelves behind a door marked, "We'll revisit if needed," leaving in your hands only a slim volume titled Enough. Open that little book and feel the relief of a smaller story, the one where you do not need to become anyone else before you sleep, where the bed is not a courtroom, where the verdict is always rest. Let the breath grow round and rhythmic, and with each cycle, imagine the room expanding by a finger width, giving you more sky, more soft air, more distance from the thorny edges of thought, until the room feels as wide as a safe meadow at night, and you are a quiet animal, breathing in the grass, drowsy and unthreatened. Bring awareness to the sounds that exist now, perhaps a distant engine, the hush of a fan, the faint tick of something cooling, and include them in the meditation as if they were friendly crickets keeping a watch. Because you are not alone when you sleep. The world hums a soft guardianship. If a worry insists on attention, place it gently in a paper boat with the word seen and thanked written on the side. Set it upon the stream of breath and watch it drift into the dark, where wise waters work on it without your surveillance. Now extend gratitude forward, offering thanks to the you who will wake. Thank you for rising when it is time, for stretching gently, for greeting the morning with one kind sentence, for moving the day a little toward compassion. And let that future gratitude ripple backward into your present body as assurance that you are accompanied by your own care. Imagine tiny lanterns lighting along your nerves, not bright, just enough to show pathways relaxing. And with each exhale, a few lanterns dim and go out, not from neglect, but from finishing their watch, until only one lantern glows in the center of your chest, the pilot light of your being. Steady and calm. Place your attention 3 fingers below the navel and feel the breath rock this point like a boat tied calmly at a dock. And let that rocking infuse your whole frame, a rhythm older than your worries and kinder than your plans. If images come, shorelines, a childhood room, the face of someone safe, let them be projections on the inside of the night, friendly and faint, passing with the ease of clouds. Return to the altar in the center of awareness and notice how the bouquet of small mercies has grown by simply being witnessed, as if acknowledgement were water, as if gratitude were sunlight, as if your attention were soil. Sit there for a breath or two more and then allow the altar to become the whole room. the whole room to become the whole night, and the whole night to become a soft hand under your body, lifting all the places where tension tries to sink. Tell the muscles that they may hand in their keys. Tell the thoughts that their patrol is over. Tell the heart that it may sing softly to itself without listening for footsteps. If you want a closing blessing, let it be this. May I be safe, may I be soft, may I be held, may I rest in gratitude that is not dependent on circumstance, but is the simple recognition that I am woven into a kindness older than my name. Now let even the blessing dissolve into breath, and let the breath dissolve into the quiet that is not absence, but presence without edges, and let that quiet carry you across the threshold where waking becomes dream. Dream becomes deep sleep, and deep sleep becomes the hush that changes you without asking you to try, while gratitude, faithful as a night watch, sits in the doorway keeping the room warm, waiting to smile when morning opens its gentle eye. Imagine your life as a long, kind river whose surface changes with every season, but whose current knows its way to the sea. And let tonight be the place where you finally understand that gratitude is not a mood you chase, but the riverbed itself, the quiet shape beneath your days, guiding water home. Begin by gathering all the strands we have practiced, seeing the hidden hands that carried you, bowing to challenge without stabbing yourself with a second arrow, thanking the body as a monastery of patience, letting words become soft lanterns, letting generosity walk on 2 feet, holding your own heart as a guest of honor, and braid them into a rope you can lower into every well you will meet. On the inhale, feel the rope's sturdiness. On the exhale, feel how it lowers with ease, reaching water without scraping the stone. Because this is the art now, to live in gratitude as a style rather than a stunt, as a rhythm that makes the ordinary sing. Picture a small calendar on the bedside table marked with 21 circles, and as you drift toward sleep, imagine coloring one circle each night with the faint gold of having noticed something true and thanked it, not for merit badges, not for proof, but because continuity is how the heart learns trust. If you miss a night, bless the imperfection that proves you are human and begin again without scolding, because beginning again is sacred work and gratitude is the best reason to return. Design in your mind a morning that bows to what mattered in the night, a simple 3-step opening. Wake and place a hand on your heart. Whisper, "Thank you, I am here." Sit for 3 breaths and look toward a window or the idea of one. Whisper, "Thank you, light, for finding me." Stand and drink water with full attention. Whisper, "Thank you, water, for being the memory of mountains." Let this become the seam that binds day to day, so even when hours grow loud, you can feel the early stitch holding. Throughout your day, plant small bells that chime you back, a password that includes gratitude, a phone alarm named "Breathe Kindly," a sticky note on the mirror that reads, "What's one good thing you can say aloud right now?" And honor each bell by pausing for 10 heartbeats, because a practice that fits inside 10 heartbeats can survive even storm weather. Cultivate a kitchen table ritual where once a week, you and anyone who shares your roof place one sentence of appreciation on the table like a loaf of bread, specific, warm, unadorned, and take a slice from one another, chewing slowly. When alone, write your sentence on a slip and tuck it into a jar. Then on lean nights, pull a slip and read it back to the body that earned it. Let your errands become pilgrimages of thanks, seeing the grocery as a living museum of rain and labor, the bus as a shrine to public trust, the crosswalk as a vow kept between strangers, and whisper a brief thank you at each threshold as if stamping your passport through the republic of the ordinary. Let your work, whatever its texture, be braided with gratitude by naming the unseen roles that make your tasks possible, and by finishing each day with a small closing ritual, a desk cleared, a sentence written to tomorrow's you, a breath shared with the room that says, we did what we could and we will return. In conflict, let gratitude be the candle you light before speaking. Briefly naming one truth you value about the other person or the relationship, not to avoid the necessary boundary, but to remember why it is worth guarding. In sorrow, let gratitude be the shawl that keeps you warm enough to feel what must be felt without freezing, thanking the tears as consecrating water and the ache as witness to love. Befriend the seasons by crafting gestures that tune you to the earth. First fruit in spring offered back to the soil with a word of thanks. A summer night where you sit under open sky and name the day's helpers. An autumn walk where each fallen leaf becomes a prayer for release. A winter evening where you wrap your shoulders in a blanket like a visible gratitude and read an old letter aloud to honor continuity. Keep your body fluent in appreciation by moving in ways that say thank you through action, stretching the calves as if bowing to the road, washing the face as if blessing a pilgrim who has returned, placing lotion on tired hands like oil on the hinges of the door you pass through all your life, lying down for sleep as if entering a temple you carry on your back. Practice gratitude toward time by loosening your grip on urgency and learning the love language of intervals. 5 minutes of order to soothe the future, 5 minutes of nothing to honor the present, 5 minutes of recalling the past without trial. When the mind hisses that you are behind, thank it for its concern and remind it that rivers do not run late, they run. When comparison knocks, greet it with the sentence, thank you for reminding me to return to my lane. Then actually return, using the breath as your blinker. If you keep accounts, keep a double entry ledger. On one side the gifts received today, on the other the gift offered. Noticing how some entries crossed the book, how the patience you received at noon became the patience you returned at 5, how the meal you ate became the steadiness you gave in a late conversation, how the kindness to yourself at dawn became the boundary you drew at dusk. Share gratitude publicly sometimes to strengthen the commons. Write a review for a small business that treated you well. Compliment a city worker. Email a teacher from years ago. Bring snacks to a night shift. Tip with a note that names a specific grace and share it privately often to strengthen the soul. Thank the body for carrying you through a memory, the breath for finding you in a tight hallway, the bed for learning your shape and still supporting you. There will be days you forget, days when the rope feels rough or absent, when gratitude seems like a language you once spoke but can't conjugate under fluorescent light. On those days, shrink the practice to the smallest unit, a single square of light on a countertop, the warmth of a mug base on your palm, the relief between inhale and exhale, and place one true thank you there as you would place a flag on an island to remind yourself this land exists. Watch how the island becomes an archipelago and then a continent as attention returns. Keep a vow to repair when gratitude fails and you speak sharply by returning to say thank you for telling me and I'm sorry, which is gratitude with legs walking toward restoration. Teach gratitude to the children and the child in you, not as a script, but as a scavenger hunt for wonder. How many blues can you find in one sky? How many helpers can you name in one sandwich? How many times can you hear water today? How many ways do we come home? Weave gratitude into thresholds, doorways, elevators, car doors, logins, by linking each crossing with a breath that says arriving, and each exit with a breath that says leaving. Because to notice transitions is to keep ceremony alive inside the ordinary. Cultivate companions who practice with you, friends who accept your thanks without suspicion and who offer theirs freely. Be that friend. Recognize when gratitude becomes performance and gently remove the costume by returning to specificity and silence. Let your sleep each night be a liturgy that gathers the day's offerings and lays them on a quiet altar. Breath as incense, fatigue as flowers, effort as water, joy as flame, regret as ash that will feed tomorrow's garden. Close your eyes as if closing the temple for the night, not to shut out the world, but to keep its lamp safe. Trust that even without your supervision, the river keeps moving and the altar remains tended by forces older than your name. Before dreams pull you across, whisper a final blessing that seals the practice into the marrow. May I remember to see. May I be easy to help and eager to help. May my body be a place where gratitude can sit down and rest. May my home radiate thanks in every direction like a quiet hearth in winter. May I live in a way that makes appreciation unnecessary to say because it is evident. And yet, may I say it anyway because speaking, it keeps my tongue humble and my heart awake. And if, somewhere in the night, you stir, touch the sheet, and murmur thank you to the darkness for its faithful work, and turn again like a tide going home, over weeks and months the rope will fray and be remade, the calendar will fill and empty, thresholds will blur and sharpen, and each time you will return to this simple riverbed, letting gratitude shape your course, trusting that when you honor the gifts you're already swimming in, you become both softer and stronger, both humble and bright. You become the kind of presence that makes rooms easier for others to breathe in. You become, without trying to be, a living thanks. Now sink into the cradle you have prepared with your own attention. Feel the night lift you as if you were light enough to carry, which you are, and let sleep arrive like a friend who knew the way without directions, a friend who carries your rope and your calendar and your vows to the morning, where you will wake a little more woven into the world you love and ready to keep loving it in the smallest, truest ways. Across these nights together, we have practiced a simple and radical art, remembering that life is woven, that nothing we rely on stands alone, and that gratitude is the thread that steadies the weave and softens the hand that touches it. We learn to bow to the seen and unseen helpers of an ordinary day, to meet hardship without adding the second arrow, to speak thank you with a voice that heals rather than performs, to let generosity put shoes on our appreciation, to turn the same tenderness inward so the one who gives is also gently kept, and to fall asleep inside a quiet ritual where breath carries thank you in and I release out. Perhaps You noticed how the body listens when it is praised for trying, how the jaw unlocks when we bless small mercies, how the mind stops rehearsing old trials when we offer them a chair and a drink instead of a courtroom, how the room itself seems to glow when we name its humble guardians: pillow, lamp, glass of water, window, square of sky. Perhaps you felt the world answer back, trees returning breath, gravity returning steadiness, time returning chances to begin again, and understood that gratitude is not a sentiment but a relationship, a way of moving through hours that changes the quality of those hours. This is your invitation to keep the practice alive in the smallest units that survive any weather. 3 slow breaths on waking, 1 honest sentence of appreciation each day, a tiny act of service delivered without theater, a boundary drawn with care so kindness has a home to return to. A nightly review that places one true thank you on the altar of attention. Let these be enough, because enoughness is the secret door to peace. And if you would like a gentle companion to remind you, to walk with you through soft stories and guided gratitude before sleep, to help your nervous system learn the sound of safety, I invite you to join and subscribe to Buddhism for Sleep, to leave a comment about what opened for you, to share an episode with someone who needs a warm light in the hallway of their evening. This channel is a small temple of the ordinary where we practice belonging, where we rest without apology, where we remember together that being alive is not a race to win but a relationship to tend. May you carry these simple vows into your next day. See clearly, thank freely, give lightly, receive kindly, rest deeply, and return each night to the harbor of your breath, where gratitude keeps a lamp lit on the windowsill and the dark itself becomes a friend that knows the way to morning.